pick up for a second a piece of what we were talking about last time regarding taking unprofitable credit for what you've apparently achieved. The easy way to do that is simply to kill the past. Simply do not talk about any change and improvement that you ever made. I bring it back up, I was going to say, because I know it sounded a bit weird and unexpected about not taking credit even with yourself about what you apparently accomplished. But even while talking about that, that is weird and unexpected and surprising. I'm aware that I continually will stop for a second and say, well, I know that sounded weird, or this is going to sound weird. And it's not on the basis, and now I make jokes about, are you out there? And is anybody listening? It's not that you or any audience I might have is unusually stupid and me unusually intelligent. The one thing to remember is not that. It's that this, what I'm doing is talking about things that life does not normally have people discuss. Which also ties in, I can't resist. That is the difference between, since I started using for a while temporarily the word mystic and mysticism to cover what we're doing. Ordinary people, they take mysticism or the mystical to be what? I'll answer for you. The weird. It doesn't say it in the dictionary, but that's one reason I know any right-thinking person hesitates to use the word. But what do ordinary people consider to be the mystical? I'm sure that the most commonly agreed upon word in the English language, if I were to give suggestions when they went, well, I don't know. If I said, how about weird? I'll bet you in a crowd of 10,000, over 9,000 will go, yeah, I bet that's it. Just immediately they'd say, well, don't look any further. That's the word. Which also, I could say is parallel to the difference between, that we were also mentioned between myths, which are really detailing of the future. That if there are myths, that is some form of knowledge that is outside the normal scope and the normal flow, the knowledge would have to be not with a reflection of what man is, not a telling of his past, surely, but would be a kind of sketching of what he might be, what he will be, what he could be. But once you take it as being a fact, once the myths are taken to be in some way literal, once they get in the hands of the ordinary, they're no longer mythical, they become either historical fact or some combination of historical fact and maybe allegory, assuming they know what allegory means. But there is a parallel between that kind of comparison, distinction, and what I was talking about, that the mystical to ordinary people seems to be the weird, and it's not. If it was, everyone would already be mystical. Everyone who reads flying saucer books, everyone who believes in secret vibrations coming out of Russian cosmonauts or spirits, premonitions, all forms of occultism, then everybody would be a mystic. If it was just weirdness, and everyone's already had their full opportunity to go through that. You know, weirdness produces one thing, more weirdness. It does not prove any form of enlightenment. And so that's what makes the mystical, again, hard to see, or that's what keeps the myths from surviving in any mythical form, in any useful form. Because real I could use other terms, but in this case, real mysticism, or the mystical, is simply that which life does not normally have any need for people to talk about. That's what mysticism is. That's what the mythical is. That's what the secret work is. That's what the great secret work is. That's what the semi-great secret work. That's what the neo-secret great work is. That's what the progressive neo-secret work, or that's what the orthodoxy, regressive, great neo-secret, mythical, esoteric work. When it exists, it is a speaking of that which is not normally spoken of. But not on the basis of weird, because if that was the simple classification, you could get up now and say, well, I'll be a mystic if I can meet those qualifications, and you'd start talking about yucky stuff, gory stuff, You can say, well, that's unspeakable. People don't normally talk about those kind of crude body functions in public. Now, the trick is I say I'm talking about, of course, the trick is that you normally begin to think that way yourself, that which you do not normally think of. But it's not on any polarized basis. It's not on the basis, well, I will think about something sickening because I hate sickening stuff. Or I will think about politics because politics bores me to death. It's not that. There is no explanation. See, if I give an explanation, if an ordinary person was listening to this and say, well, if the mystical is the thinking of that which men do not normally think of, then give me an example. But you understand, as soon as I give an example, I've taken the mystical and turned it into medry. I've turned it into fodder. I've turned it into talk, chit-chat. So there you are. By God. I said it's a figure of speech, but I looked around and there you were. I was going to tell you something else tonight, as long as we were just talking. Some real secret information. I was going to tell you life's middle name. Well, it's not normally known. You didn't know life's name until I told you a few months ago. But now I'm going to tell you life's middle name. Gradual. AKA perpetual. Also dragged out. And sometimes amongst real intimate friends, the successively sequential. Tied to that, assuming that we'll get back to it in a minute, we will. Tied to that is, out of all the talk we've been doing about the civilized, and about, last time I was talking again about age and taking credit for that which you should not take credit for. And I was using the kind of examples that of simply getting too old to do certain things or outgrowing them. You don't know why, you just lose interest in something, and then, especially if you have any inclination to be a drugstore mystic, is then start taking credit for it. Well, I see that all the worry I had over taking drugs, I mean, it bothered me. I always wanted to be a mystic, but I started hanging around that crowd when I was a teenager, so I kept taking drugs. And all the time I knew this is not the best way. Oh, sure, I had a few experiences that probably helped me see a bit further, gave me a hint where this mystical great quest was going, but I kept knowing I just knew it wasn't right. I just knew it wasn't right. And by God, I finally quit. I sort of lost interest. And they're not aware of the fact, they're not supposed to be aware of the fact that they're now, I just pick out an age, 28. They've been taking drugs for 13 years, and they simply got over it. So you don't have to be old to get old like I'm talking about. They simply outgrew that, and if they had any mystical leanings to start with, well, they should have moved to Italy. But well, they could have been a tourist attraction at no additional price. But the thing is, you take credit, whether you go around with a billboard, a sandwich sign saying, look at me. The thing is, if the idea of drugs come up or you're thinking about it, and it distracts you about, well, at least I'm making some progress because I knew that wasn't right. And so what it is, your mind thinks, well, I've been working on it. In other words, I've been worrying about it for 14 years. And now I lost interest, and so I quit. And it's only natural. If you're an ordinary stumble bum, an ordinary person with a mind, what else can you do? You assume I've got to take some sort of credit, whether you overtly go out trying to strike up a parade or National Me Day. You assume that you take credit because it's not like you just got up one day and lost interest in drugs. That's not the way it seems. It seems as though you've been working on it for 14 years. Right. You understand? That is not willful, relentless, conscious effort. That's dying. It's growing up. It's growing old. It's outgrowing your clothes. It's outgrowing drugs, alcohol, certain kinds of sex, certain kind of lifestyle, all that stuff. But back to where we were. The thing about civilization and me talking about different generations and the age, see, from giving this example, it doesn't mean that you got to be 50 or 60, because you can get over something by the time you're just in your 20s or even before and take credit. If you already got the kind of leaning that I want to be some sort of exceptional person, or I'm interested in the mystical, the mythical, some kind of secret struggle within myself, then you take any credit you can get your little grubby paws on. And it doesn't mean anything. But the way I put it to you last time was, you can't be sure, and so if you're alert, you don't take any credit because you don't know for sure. And that's why I was swinging it tonight. An easy way past all that is just simply slay the past. Period. All of the past, which I've mentioned to you before, but to include this now, because if you do not even think, don't even think about how you've changed. It doesn't matter that you have quit drinking. It doesn't matter that you have lost 40 pounds. It doesn't matter that you have now taken enough exercise. It doesn't matter that you eat better. It doesn't matter that you're in the best health of your life. So what? What's thinking about got to do with it? Now, that's ordinary people. That's to sit down and not, well, we've been through that. Back to, I wanted you to see that there is a connection. We're back to weirdness now. We're getting to real mysticism, because I'm going to point out it's ordinary words, and it's got nothing to do with people from Mars, and it's got nothing to do with the dead, with Atlantis. It's got nothing to do with Republicans who have compassion. No, none of that weird stuff. Sober Greeks, I don't know. But things that are not talked about. All the subjects I'm about to mention are talked about, but it's as though they've never been put together in this kind of way. And it's not just weird. It's just they don't get put together this way. The difference between the civilized and those not is the same operationally as between an older generation and a younger generation. And by older and younger, the generation right now in charge. The generation that's in all the positions of civilized power, and then the younger, more or less up to 20. There's a great similarity. The comparison, the ratio between the two is strikingly similar if you'll listen to me, if you'll buy into this, if I can dazzle you with this kind, turn your brains into mishmash. There is a parallel between the difference between the civilized and those not, and the older generation, the adult generation, at any time, any place, and the younger one. The simple one to get you started is, how about this? From one view, quite correctly, the older generation, remember when I'm saying older generation, those old enough to be somebody's parents. They don't have to be 60, they can be in their 20s. But the older generation, the adult generation, functionally, one of their primary jobs is to civilize the younger one. To civilize them. It's not normally referred to in that manner, but notice that I'm not saying anything weird, and nobody could actually naysay that and deny it, but that covers the full spectrum of the adult population, the adult generation's job with the younger. Now, I know that they would say things like, well, nowadays it's our duty to educate them. It's our duty to see to their health, blah, 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 blah. It's to civilize them. But there's another way, right past that, of looking at it, the same thing, but it's to say that to civilize them, in essence, is to kill them. What is it? We can start simple, Lee. What is it that parents are doing when they tell a 6 or 7-year-old kid that, listen, you're old enough now, you have got to stop screaming out in public. When we're out shopping, just because you want something, if I say you can't have it, don't scream. And if the kid was that kind of snot-nosed smartass that probably some of you were, would-be philosopher, the kid might go, why? Which we don't get into the various ways, especially since we have some undercover agents out here. They're present from Bolivia. We don't get into some of the methods that children are known to use to torture adults. The kid says, why? Now, without me making up, you can think up as many if you hadn't thought about them. You plug them out of your memory from movies, TV, everywhere. Think about the kinds of things that parents will say, adults, the older generation, the adult generation will tell the kid. They'll start saying, well, other people have feelings, or it's almost endless. Other people have feelings, they don't hear you scream. Ah! Why? well, you're old enough now, you need to behave. If you notice, adults do not scream. If it gets to it, the parent will say, well, one thing, you have got to learn some kind of discipline. Now, you're 6 or 7 years old, and I've let you get by like any other kid. There are things I could not hold you responsible for your behavior and spilling things and throwing up and doing it in your pants. But now you're 7 years old, and when I say it's for your own good, do not scream out in public just because you do not get your way. You've got to learn, you've got to develop into your own little man or woman. You've got to exercise a certain kind of restraint. You've got to learn how to control, blah, blah, blah. What's all that saying? Be civilized. What is it also saying? At one level, it is saying you got to die. You have got to die to that kind of animal, uncontrolled, uncivilized nature. You cannot any longer live by hormones, you little rugrat. Quit screaming, quit throwing up, and listen to me. Just do what I tell you. I'm not going to hurt you. I wouldn't tell you anything that'd be to your disadvantage. Listen to me. What's it saying? Prepare to die. Of course, I am being crude. It's prepare to conform. Prepare to learn how. Quit screaming in public. Learn how to move. Learn how to bah. Learn how to fit. Learn how to put in or live with certain restraints, confines. Now, what they won't say is your behavior. But what is the behavior? What is the uncivilized behavior? What is the behavior? I'm using the way they would say it, because they would, an ordinary person by now, if they were following into this, would want to begin to argue that adults are not trying to kill the children. Of course, I don't mean physically. And then if they say, oh, wait a minute, they're not trying to kill them intellectually. Because the same kind of parents you're describing, I tell my children not to scream out in public, but I am right now saving up money, doing without, to lay aside a fund for his college. I'm trying to save up to put him in a private elementary school, in fact. So I'm not trying to kill him. Civilization is a form of murder. It is a form not only of acceptable homicide, it is a form of necessary homicide. Remember, life's middle name that I told you now is gradual, perpetual, dragged out, and to the intimate, the successively sequential. Why does one generation try to teach the next? If you look at any creature on this planet, although I'll admit again, there is no such thing as a perfect comparison between us and other creatures. Between us and warthogs, close, but I know the rest. The rest of it, I know I stretch it a bit to have to, use beavers and calves and. But if you'd like to note the level of any of you who are still worried about the intelligence of ordinary humanity, including the educated, is them still debating those who spend their lives studying animals. The zoologists studying animals and still pondering how much of animal behavior, how much that a bird knows, a little baby baby bird, how much does it know, and how much does the adult birds have to teach them? If we'd all like to just pause for a second and be thankful that we're all still alive in this planet together, when it's people such as that, with mucho years of college, recognized as the authorities in their field, are still wondering, how much does a little baby beaver know? Because I've been studying beavers now for 30 years. Yes, we know you're the renowned expert, but I'm still somewhat, not somewhat, I am still unsure as to exactly how much of beaver behavior is learned and how much is inherited. Just in case any of you want anything to be thankful for, since it's so far from Thanksgiving, I know some of you sort of break out in a sweat, but be thankful that we're all still here. Those people are in charge of the academic world, the scientific world. At any rate, what I was getting at, may I point out to you that at the hormonal level, from the level of human consciousness down in the nervous system and the nervous system of this planet, the local nervous system, which will include all sentient creatures, there is no such thing as learned behavior. No, they have to debate for the same reason that they have to debate and still worry over the great, continuing, down there, all-consuming question of to what degree are humans driven by the environment and by how much by heredity. It's kind of a watered-down version of that in case that's too strong for you. It's sort of like adding a little water to your table wine. To think, wow, I won't worry about that. How about animals? Boy, that's a real question. Are those little beavers, how much, they hang around the adults and they'll swim over here and they do something and then the little ones swim after. Are they actually learning something and we just don't realize it? May I just fast forward right ahead and I point out to you that there's no such thing as learned behavior. It's a hobby that they're putting up with. That's something that keeps them off the street and out of our hair. There's no such thing at the physical level. I'll slip up a little with you, easy. There's no such thing at the hormonal level. There's no such thing from the level of consciousness down as learned behavior. It does not exist, except in people's minds, except as a verbal hobby. From the line up, it would appear to be, if you were following it that far, might appear to be the possibility of another ball game. That is why humans will say, that is why the adult generation will say, I have something to teach you. I want you to listen to me. It is not about behavior. That's what they will say. Think about it. That's what they always say. Now, I know that they'll encourage you to study, do your homework, but when the adult population, the adult generation, your parents, but the whole generation ahead of you, wherever you were, what they say is their general attempt is to improve, to refine, to make acceptable your behavior. Now, if that were true, it would be strictly on the basis of the hormones. Strictly. It would be from the level here down. But since we are not a clear-cut dichotomous creature, it bleeds over, it graduates. It is a dragging out of what seems to be trying to affect the behavior down here, such as, you're 7 years old now, quit pulling down your sister's panties. You're too old for that. You can't do that. And quit throwing your food. Anyway, it's at the hormone levels where it seems to start. But then what is civilization? What is it when they say, listen to me, learn from our experience. Let me tell you what kind of behavior is going to get you in trouble, will make you suffer, will make you nuts, will make you crazy. It is an attempt to lock up. It is an attempt to nail down the loose ends of the intellect. It is the fact that everyone had the mystical experience. Everyone's intellect got fired up. If you wanted to look at it, that was the progenitor. That was the original model of Michelangelo's thing of God and Adam. It was when you went by on the assembly line and life looked you dead in the eye and you looked up and went, that's when you came alive and you looked off and life said next and you went out. It was then that the intellect got fired up. The body was already fired up. It was fired up in the same way that hippos and beavers were. Hormonally, you're not going anywhere. Hormonally, you are cauterized. The nervous system, you know my drawing. When you get to the level of consciousness, from the line down, any hobby you got down there is strictly chump. It's losing weight, gaining weight. That's about it. That's about the best you can do. People really hard for a hobby, they believe, well, I can change my diet and live longer. Or when they really get brilliant, let's see, if I quit smoking, my lungs, I might not spit as much blood. Or if I quit drinking as much as I do, my liver might go down enough so I could get on a suit or a blouse. To consider the level of consciousness, the human level of consciousness, from here down, you do understand, to talk about change, down here, really, the only thing that amounts to, that we can even discuss, that is discernible, is weight loss. That's about it. Now, I know nowadays you can go have plastic surgery, go have liposuction or hipposuction, whatever they call it. I always thought it was some real fat person, they would get the name wrong and they'd suck it out in one of those machines. Maybe I'd be better at it if I hadn't slept through 10th grade biology. There is no question of change from here down. If those of you who have been around, you've got to see it on your own. That should be well established. From here down, even those who would out there in the city, even ordinary people that are still caught up with the serious debate as to how much of man is driven, how much of humanity is driven by the environment and how much by its heredity, all that. If I could get them for a second, and I said, listen, and I gave my picture and the level of consciousness, this and that, and from here down we're just like animals. And they went, all right. And I'd say, from here down, there's no question, would you say, as to from here down, are we driven by the environment or heredity? Just for a second, they say, well, now if you're just playing speculation, no, if that was all it was. Yeah. But then they'd say, of course, that's not what we are. And I'd have to agree, no, it's not. But from here down is where the canard, the dreamy canard, the tango of yes, I will change. And each generation tells the next one, learn from us, we're going to tell you the right way to change. But what they're saying is, without knowing it, because they're just working for life like everyone else, unknowingly, slave labor, what they're doing is trying to pacify the next generation is a graduation. It is a dragging out, a never-ending move of life that the nervous system at the physical level, from the level of consciousness down, is fixed. I mean, you're done for. Nowadays, the modern science, I know that you could have a game leg and they might be able to make you walk better, and you can have plastic surgery, etc. I'm not saying that, but from here down, whatever the next generation was born at, whatever your kid was born as, physically, that's what he is. They can't repair brain damage, etc. Anyway, that's what we are. From here down, beavers were born, beavers we die. That's it. From here up, it's a lot less specific, which in other ways, if you'd like to praise man, we could also say, if speaking allegorically, that God must have loved us and had faith in us, because no other creature, any other creature had gone absolutely bonkers by now if they'd made beavers, but then made a loose end like, well, yes, I'm a beaver, and by God, a good beaver. But I keep thinking I should be something else. I keep thinking perhaps I should go off on some mythical beaver quest. They would be out of their skulls by now. This planet would be absolute chaos. Mooses running around going, well, my father was a moose, and my mother was a moose, and I can't say I'm ashamed to be a moose, but by God, I'd like to, I don't know, be an accountant or an eagle. Well, in the same, well, I was going to say in the same way from the level down, man knows that, he can't be anything but this. But the reason I didn't say that, thank you. See, the reason I didn't say that, because it's going to get us off the track, is because ordinary mystics believe that's not true. Wherein comes the distracting stories, the busy work of would-be street corner mystics. They firmly believe in physical weirdness. That if I was a real mystic, or if I saw a real mystic, I'd know him because he could do physical magic feats. He could fly. He could die and come back to life. You could cut him and he wouldn't bleed. That kind of thing. What each generation is doing to the next via life's unwritten instructions is the word is being passed in a gradual and non-ending manner, a perpetuation. It is dragged out forever under all sorts of forms, but what civilization is in the widest sense, the way I mean it, the way I keep using the term, is the adult generation before yours, for everyone's. The adult generation before that is trying to inspecifically cauterize, nail down these loose flapping ends of a tent that is the mind. They're telling you, each generation, don't do so-and-so for your own good. Or don't do so-and-so because I say not to. Or don't do so-and-so because you will be running so contrary to the mainstream of life that will run over you. You'll hurt yourself. You're going to kill yourself. What they're saying is, without knowing it, is that the mind is, from down here, it's like we're a good established foundation for something. But then from the level up, it's like you put a tent up on top of Mount Everest. And you try to nail down, you try to put down pegs on one corner of the tent, and by God, the wind blows up another one, and it's always like your whole life is kind of going. And I don't mean you have to be a nervous wreck or neurotic, but it's the mind is always going, especially if you have interest outside the mainstream. If you're a would-be mystic, it's always like, well, none of this will do. And it's like the generation right before yours went, although they appear to be talking about something quite otherwise. You understand? That's why I said the attempt for one generation, the adult, to civilize the succeeding one is in a sense an attempt to kill them. That is to kill this motion, to confine it, to soothe them, to go, come here. Under all kinds of guise, not just come here, not in a comforting. Sometimes it can be, you do that and you'll die. You do that and we'll put you in jail. We'll ostracize you. It can be threats. But the threats are still on the basis of, oh, come here. The threats are on the basis of, forget all that stuff. You never did have a mystical, you never did look at life. There's nothing to be learned. You know, be a good Baptist, calm down, get married, buy a trailer, have some children, go in debt. And don't scream at me in public when I don't buy you something. Well, I'm 30 years old. Well, don't scream anyway. By me saying to you that life's middle name was gradual and perpetual and dragged out, all of life, I mean, this should be obvious. And I know surely I can describe it in a few words, a few pictures, and you sit there, not through my great intellect and my ability to be poetic. There was a young girl from Tucker. Oh, well. What was I talking about? Dragged out. And the idea of successively, sequential. What I was going to say is, I can make a little picture, I'm sure, and by now you can do it. You look around and you realize life is at the human level. The only one that's of any interest to us, the only one that you might have any possible effect on, the only place where there are castles and dragons and kings and tomorrow and a future, chance, not just fate and destiny, where all of the fairy tales, all of the myths, all of that which is human exists is from here up. From here down can be a hell of a lot of fun. I assume I'm not telling you a secret. But it's from up here. From down here, I hate to take away, but does everybody understand that mooses screw and that beavers eat? I've even seen a beaver eat a piece of pizza. I'm just trying to give you an idea. As much fun as you can have from here down, it is not singular to man. It is only from here up that the mythical kingdoms and the mythical possibilities exist. But what I was wanting you to see is they're non-ending. See, from here down, there is a conclusiveness to your individual life. Not just the successive generations, but now go into the individual. From here down, in the physical life of each person, is the only place that there is any conclusiveness. That is, you're hungry, you eat. You get full, you stop eating. You have to go to the bathroom, you go to the bathroom. You get through, and you're all right. You're sleepy, you go to bed. You go to sleep, you wake up when you get through sleepy. That is the only form of any apparent conclusiveness. From here up, there is no such animal. From here up, if it is conclusiveness, you're brain dead, literally. You're damaged. You're either damaged, as they would say, genetically, physically, or else I know that they claim that there are other forms like, well, you're damaged psychologically, which is not true. But if you've reached the end point of conclusiveness from here up, you're dead. That's it. So life itself, at the human level, from here up, now everywhere else there seems to be conclusiveness in life, with beavers, with hippos, with foxes, with men. But from here up, it is a non-ending process. The mind believes otherwise. The mind wants to believe otherwise. The mind enjoys believing otherwise, and it looks for that which apparently is conclusive. It looks for the abrupt. And there is no such thing as the abrupt once you see it in the human mind, in the singular world of man. It is only from here down that the abrupt exists. I'm using abrupt now as being anonymous with the gradual, with the perpetual. You know, by gradual, what I mean is like a non-ending, a progressive, a kind of uniformity that just goes on, and you're born, and the mind's already going. The intellectual life on this planet, it's already going. You look back where it's apparently your horizon, April 17th, 1964. There's you. You can lie and look at you, look at everybody else if you can see their mind, and it goes on and on. You can read history. Find the first writings that you ever find a book, that you find some piece of writings, such and such cave or such and such place, 3742, the best I can guess, BC. It goes on and on. And they're speculating about this and that. It goes on and on. And there's a kind of uniformity, a kind of gradualness, and it goes on, and it goes as far as you look, and there seems to be no end to what happens to the mind. It continues to do this. But it's just so, in a sense, we'll pretend I'm giving like a psychological or medical diagnosis. I'm giving a real diagnosis. This being so foreign to every other form of life to which man is exposed. He is alone in this regard. And so the mind looks for that which would be anonymous to this progressive, uniform sequence, never ending. It looks for the abrupt, which I'm using now as abrupt as being an anonym to the never ending, gradual perpetuation of life. This produces much of what seems to be the workings of civilization, and it produces all of what ordinary people go are the unanswerable questions, the problems of civilization, the problems of man, is by dividing it, by the mind accepting that things should be abrupt, that there should be answers. And as I have so often tried to get you to see, in a sense, if the mind could succeed at that, in becoming conclusive, all it would be suicidal. It'd be suicidal to the individual, which does at times happen. Even though they may continue to function intellectual enough to speak, they become fanatics, either well-known or not so well-known, and they usually end up in a gutter, or else in charge of a country. As to which is preferable, I'll leave that. It's your decision. The same way, now I'm going to try to pull some of these together right fast. The same way there seems to be, there are terms now, it's not all that new, but the term like generation gap, or there would appear to be a distinct generation. If I ask you just to think about it, you think, all right, there is a distinct gap, a distinct cutoff between, you might say, you, with no offense to your father or mother, but you could say there is a distinct, I can see it, we've discussed it, there is a distinct, an abrupt, if you will, line between my parents' generation in many areas, specific ones that we can discuss, morality, music, fashion, and mine. You can just see it. Social commentators will go as far as say there's such thing as an 80s generation, a 90s generation. There appears to be a distinct cut between the civilized and the uncivilized. Now, people don't normally think about it, but they continually will speak in an offhand manner, even passes for an erudite manner. Someone will say, well, this kind of behavior that these people have done, to go in and hold up a store, get the money, and then for no reason to turn around and just tell everybody to lay down, and when they laid down, they were already ready to left the door and shot them all. That is totally uncivilized. In other words, it just seems to be an absolute abrupt distinction. And any ordinary person would be foolish and be displaying their own shoe polish that they were using for brains, for them to say, well, that's not completely uncivilized. Well, sure it is. I mean, how are you going to stand around and say, wait a minute, I'd like to say a few words on behalf of these mad dog murderers that killed these poor people laying there face down. There's nothing to say. You just have to go, you're right. There's a cutoff line. It's a distinct break between the civilized and the uncivilized. And any ordinary, civilized, sane, sophisticated, reasonable man knows uncivilized behavior when he sees it. In the same way that I know the difference between a grown person and a child. I know the difference between an adult, at whatever age, and someone not adult. Whether they be a teenager or they could be in their 20s. But they say, I know the difference between being civilized and not being civilized, the difference between being an adult, a responsible adult, which is always the tacit, at least, adjective that goes with, the modifier, a responsible adult, and an irresponsible child. Someone, maybe a teenager, but someone not yet mature enough to meet the qualification of being a responsible adult. There is also a difference. Let's bring in a third one that has to do with the graduation, the successively sequential. Time, which runs through all of this, but how about specifically time zones? I'm not just playing with maps and human diagrams, but how about this? You could be standing somewhere in eastern Alabama, 1 foot right here, one over here, and you could look down. Here comes the time zone. You got your left foot in the eastern time zone, and over here, there's somebody staying here. Just get your start, and somebody says, all right, you say, what time is it? And they say, it's 12:10. And you turn right around here, and you ask somebody else. You say, what time is it? And they say, it's 11:10. All right. You can't say, well, wait a minute. That's like being a little pregnant, being a little uncivilized. Well, I killed these people, sort of. I sort of killed them. No. There's an abruptness to it. Now, I know seems artificial, but now listen a minute. Right here, your left foot can be in a place that everyone there, everyone who is sane, everyone who is an adult, a responsible, educated, learned, civilized person, right over here, you say, can you tell me the time? It's very important. I've got to take my medicine, or I'm late for a funeral. And they one and all say, it's 12:10. You say, there's no doubt. There's no doubt. We have an atomic clock over here. Ned carries one in the back of his pickup truck. I just wanted to show you, Alabama's not as provincial as some of you seem to think. Same man turns around this way and asks a group of people, it's very important, can you tell me the exact time? They say it's 11:10, right over here. So you understand that. And you can say, well, that's artificial. You look up. I just want you to see the non-ending aspect of life, even at the physical, even at the material level. But you even look up. Forget this now. I just wanted to start you there. Forget that. You can look up. Instead of 12:10, let me make it easy. Let's say it was 12. Well, let's say 12. 12:10. 11:10. Trust me. I'll say there's 11:10 over here and 10:10 11:50 over here. See, that's what I get for not showing up for rehearsal today. Let's say over here in the Eastern time zone, it's 11:50. You'll like this better, trust me. And over here, the same thing, but then of course over here in Central Time, it's 10:50. All right, so now let's go past the artificial boundaries of time zones. You physically look up, and if you know anything about the physical movements of our solar system, you can look up, and assuming it's still dew on the ground, you know it's AM and not PM, you can look up and you see that the sun is not overhead, it's on your left, and so you know that at some time, you don't have to be much of a Boy Scout, you can just say, well, it's not overhead, so we're getting close to noon. It's not quiet. And so without talking to people on either side of you, not the time zone, you can stand there and go, dun, and it gets right overhead. For some reason that you're just doing it as a test, where you have to be somewhere, whatever, you can look up and go, it's 12 o'clock. It's 12 o'clock whether you're staying in Alabama, Oklahoma, California. When you look up, it's 12 o'clock. You can wait there a few more minutes, just enough that you've got good eyesight, and you can see it move. It is now a different time. It is now past 12. It's one something. Now it's 1:10. it is still a non-ending progression. It is seamless. It is only the human mind that puts the seams in it. Now, they can say, or I could say for them, that civilization would not run, society would not run, the singular world of man, now we're getting somewhere, would not run without these distinct, abrupt seams such as time. I'm sure by now there's probably sociologists or social commentators that beyond the ability that they speculated to domesticate animals, to rotate crops, that to make civilization hold together, to get it going, to crank the machine up, we had to come up with a concept of time. It's easy to pick on time and say, well, I don't fool with time. I don't even own a watch, and don't bug me at what time it is. Society wouldn't work. You couldn't say, well, I will say you so-and-so, we'll sign a contract, and I'll sell you all the grain that I've grown over here in my field, or I'll swap it to you for all the milk you have, that I need it. And I'll meet you at such and such crossroads at 5 o'clock, even 4 or 5, but tomorrow afternoon. But the more it becomes civilized, the more complex it gets. You've got to have time to do trading, to do stock trading, to do sales, to enforce contracts, to carry on a love life. I'll meet you at the singles bar at 3:30, and you get there at 3:45. She's with somebody else and looks at you and goes, hey, you're history. You think, damn cheap watch, I got the weekend alone because of this damn cheap Timex. The thing is, the human mind continues, here's the way it is built. And it's because of the seamlessness. It's because that from the level of consciousness down, it is a gradual, perpetual, dragged out. So I started, when I was going to tell you Live's secret middle name, I started just to say it was dragged out. But being the poetic, loving fool that I know you and I are, I decided to slip up and say its middle name was Perpetual, a.k.a. gradual, and then slipped in dragged out. Dragged out's the real down-home, right-in-your-face name of life. Dragged out. In fact, I wanted to say drugged out. Yeah. Strung out is what I wanted to say, but I know it has such druggy connotations. But strung out is what life is. Forget the drug connotations. You all know the term, I assume, strung out. When something's strung out, it's like you're telling a story. Let me tell you this joke, and you start. It goes on, and people say, well, don't string the thing out forever. That's strung out. That you keep thinking, well, it should end. Now, can you tell me how to get to such and such crossroads? I got to meet somebody with this girl. Yeah, let me tell you. I can tell you the directions. 30 minutes later, the guy's still talking about farmhouses, and the person over here, you'll go past that farm that has a red mailbox. Let me tell you about him. You're not from around. And you think, well, don't string this thing out from ever. I got to go. That's life. Strung out. And the mind keeps wanting to find conclusiveness. Because there is conclusiveness from here down. People do not analyze it that way, but the obvious ones I point out to you. If you're horny and you screw, you're unhorny. You're hungry, you eat, you get full, you're not hungry. Now, I know you're going to have to eat later. We all know that. But right then, you're hungry, you eat. It's like one problem solved, all right? Who's next? Now I'm not hungry. Now all I got to do is figure out, what's the meaning of life? Geez, that makes me horny. I wonder so-and-so. I'll call old so-and-so. I'll go over and see her. From here down, people know. The nervous system knows. Life knows, since life arranges it, that there is a kind of abruptness possible, a kind of conclusiveness. From here up, no such thing. Not if you're alive. Not if you're just normal. Not if you're just middle class. Not if you're just ordinary. From here up, there is no conclusiveness. There is no satisfaction. You cannot feed the mind and go, ooh, boy, am I full. Now, ordinary people will say that. But what they're saying is, God, I've been eating now for X years. I'm no better off than I was. Screw this. And so they forget it. But that's the closest it passes for, oh, boy. And you look at the dean, you say, so I'm really going to graduate. I get my master's. And he goes, well, yeah, why? Are you sure? It's my name there. That I'm getting my, yes, why? And it's like, well, at least now I can give up. I don't have to keep stuffing into this useless engine or else into this never fed engine, this never satisfied engine. The mind is continually looking for abruptness. Conclusiveness, I know, is what I've said sometimes in the past, trying to get you to see this non-ending process, but look at abruptness being an anonym for gradual, for ceaseless, which is what the intellectual life of man is, which is what the nervous system is made to be. It's like a loose wire that has not been cauterized. It was like a piece of your little Ken or Barbie doll as you went by life, and life looked at you and you looked and you blinked, and it was like your little plastic mold was sucked out, and you had that little spot on you where all the little dolls have, and you were sewn up. The injection mold was pulled out, and you just went out the line, and there it is. There's the proof. I think some of you, what do you call it in America? Your navel. There it is. You also, by the way, I wasn't getting into serious medicine, but you have a neural navel. It doesn't show up on x-rays, and I know that neural surgery, at least in this part of the planet, is yet to see it, but on the human brain is a navel. At any rate, the mind continues to look for abruptness and believes it finds it. I submit to you, one we've talked about before, what are all attempts at self-improvement? No. The belief in abruptness. That is, the belief that I can change. But now, look at it this way. All the forms, the dreams of, the searching for an abruptness is always based upon itself what? A dragging out. Mm-hmm. To wit us, would you? I will. To wit. The mind will say or support a bumper sticker or a slogan, "Stop drugs now." And take it personally, like, I've got to stop drugs. Let's see, I'll join one of those 12-step programs. I'll go meet with them. I'll begin to work on my problem. Well, it's hell to do a 55-minute setup to a joke and then do the punchline and everybody goes, what? I guess I'll redo my never-ending caveats. You do understand we're not picking on self-help programs and any of that. It's not criticism. It is the point. How about religion? It's not just psychological self-help programs. I just picked out the obvious ones. Or a person decides, I have got to quit smoking. I'm tired of spitting up blood, whatever it is. I'm going to quit smoking. I mean, that sounds, they smoke all the time. Process. Goes on and on. What is stop smoking? I mean, what constitutes stopping smoking? Stopping smoking, I never really thought about it, but I guess it would be, I don't know, don't smoke anymore. Wouldn't that? Yeah, that'd fit the definition. To stop. So, the mind hears this. The mind decides, I will stop smoking. So let's see, what will I do? All right, I read a book. Wait a minute. I read a book one time. What I'll do is I'll start cutting down. Let's see, how much am I smoking? You understand? There it goes. Well, let's say I'm now smoking. I'll count them. I'll start tomorrow. It's too late now because I forgot. I'll start in the morning. Tomorrow I'll start counting how many I smoke each day. And so probably for a day or two you can manage to forget to count until it's 11 o'clock and you've already smoked half a pack. And well, now I'll never know the exact number. So you can drag that out. You follow me? For a week, a month. Let's say a few days. I'll give you credit. Since you are generic, I'll give you credit. So after a few days, you get around to it and you wake up and you've got a big sign there next to your bed. Count the cigarettes, stupid! So you start counting. So the first day you count 200 cigarettes you smoke. So you decide, all right, that's right. Well, 100, whatever, 100. Of course, then you can always drag that out. You can go, I got something to go from. You go, wait a minute, though. I need more statistical information. I don't know whether that's a good average. So you could say, well, I need 4 or 5 days. At any rate, so finally you decide, all right, on the average, I smoke 100 cigarettes a day. All right, here's what I'll do because I'm serious with this, damn it. Tomorrow, 99. No more. No more. I don't care how nervous I get. 99 and that's it. So let's see if I cut down 99. You understand? And I'm not picking on the weakness of human nature or the desire for lungs to be choked. The love of nicotine, which, if you don't have alcohol, nicotine ain't bad. You rub just the right amount on your pores. Well, don't anybody try that. It's worse than eating certain raw Japanese fish. Well, as far as the thrill inherent. Take all forms of self-help. take religion as being, take civilization, but I know it gets hard to see taken as a all-encompassing whale. So take a smaller fish like religion. It's always been the stronghold in that part of the ocean. It is always a talking about, a detailing, a verbal paradigm and maps of the abruptness, of conclusiveness. I will be, by God, a Muslim. I will be a Christian. By God, I'm sick of fooling around. I've reached an age, by God, it's back to my religion, or it's on to some religion. I will be a good person. How do you go about it? The mind dreams of, enjoys, and deals in pictures of abruptness. All right, this is enough. You come home and your wife's left you, taking the children. You've lost your job, drinking, fooling around with other women. And you went, well, I guess it's a hard way to do it. Maybe I can win her back. Maybe I can get my job back. But this is enough. You go and look in the mirror. Hubert, I'm telling you, this is it. We've got to change. And people talk about it continually. But is that the way life operates? And the answer is, of course, 1927, 42 home runs. Oh, and that was another question. The answer is no. That's it. No. That it will. The reason I drug out the 12-step programs and all that, and counting the cigarettes, it's not to make fun of people. But there is no such thing as conclusiveness. There is no such thing as abruptness in life above the level of consciousness, at the human level. And yet it talks about it. It deals with it, because if it were otherwise, you would have taken out the hobby potential. You would have taken out any fuel to run an ordinary person for 60 years, to turn it into another generation. And so they dream of, as they must, did I get too complicated? The mind dreams of, I can change. I can make abrupt changes. Now, I know, the prevailing circumstance, maybe I got a bill, but I can change. Anybody can. I know a guy that did. I read about somebody that did in Reader's Digest. I heard about it on TV. People change. Don't tell me they don't change. We're talking about change. This guy used to beat his wife. He used to be a female, a wife abuser. The man used to be an alcoholic. And he stopped. He admitted, he said he's got people who vouch for him. Signed affidavits he has not had a drink in 22 years. That's change. The guy was a drunk. We got photographs of him. He got his police record. That's what the mind loves. Conversion. Success. I'm on time. I knew it wasn't 12 yet. That there has to be apparently finish lines. That there has to be an end to the race. There has to be some way to measure the competition to stay alive, which is simply a hormonal one. But the mind deals in that. All it can do is deal with the birds. All they know how to do is deal in cat talk. I know that they now go cheep, cheep to each other, and you think, well, we're going tweet, tweet. But where the hell did you learn to talk? From cats. What's the bird language? Well, it's all cat language, except they've translated it. No. So even when it is driven by dreams of conclusiveness, the possibility of abruptness, that I can do so and so, they end up doing what? I'm going to stop smoking. Now it's clear enough. I'm going to stop eating salt. Now it's clear enough. Stop. Everybody knows what stop means, especially if you do this and go, stop. All right, how are you going to stop? All right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start using, I'm going to measure, I'm going to get some idea. I'm going to start, half. What do you mean half? But see, it's not picking on people. I'm just picking out the easy ones. The whole idea, if they actually stopped. If a man decided, well, I know how I could be closer to being a mystic. I know how I could be closer to being the human I want to be. How? And so he names a bunch of stuff. It doesn't matter what. Lose weight, quit smoking, cut down on salt. He names a whole bunch of stuff. And I say, is that it? And I take all the time you want. And he says, that's it. That would make my life perfect. Now, if such a man could turn around and say, well, when are you going to do it? You go, all right. I stall around. I've known it for years. Tomorrow. Fuck tomorrow. Now. I start now. All of it done. Goes away his cigarettes, puts his drink down. Everything he said, he stops in. What's that man going to do tomorrow? He'd be nuts. He'd have to take up some new form of, you understand? And yet the mind talks about and enjoys and is driven by ideas, cat ideas, nonverbal cat ideas of there being abruptness to life, conclusiveness, and there is no such thing in the bird world. And so they talk about it, but then I'm going to stop smoking. How will you do that? I'm going to gradually cut down. It's not funny, it's not ironic. Does anyone see why or how that is connected to why you should never take credit for doing anything? Because you haven't done anything. There's only one safe thing. If you can kill the past, that is, you don't even think about change. Don't listen to you. Sometimes you can't help other people if they come and say, you've lost 20 pounds. Or you don't like your own drugs anymore. Or you like, I don't know what. Maybe they say it before you recognize it. Just kill it. Just make it noise. Don't ever take credit for it. And tie that. And that's not just a negative. It's not just say do that. Because then you tie it with the effort. With what I mentioned a few days ago was my, finger. Was making, after that, after you kill, even thinking about any apparent accomplishment or any obvious accomplishment that I always wanted to do so and so and I've done it. So what? Just forget it. Tie that with making willful, relentless effort, conscious effort of any kind. And those of you that found that a little abrasive, of some kind. Look how easy it is to please the human mind, because I know that several of you, well, not just you here, but to say that the whole trick is to make relentless, willful, conscious effort of any kind. All right, some kind. Because if you say some kind, then people go, we're getting close.